You can begin.
Right. Okay, so good morning, everyone. So today we're going to be presenting Milton's choice of subject in the context of Renaissance critical theory. That was our essay, and as you can tell, it's a nice little light reading. I recommend it. Very strongly done. So just some background on the essay before we start. It was written by a man named Dr. Gordon Teskey. So he's a professor of English at Harvard University, as well as a Guggenheim Fellow of the Humanities. So as you can imagine, he's generally held in pretty high regard as a scholar, and in fact, he's held in pretty high regard as a Milton scholar. He teaches a course very much like this one on Paradise Lost at Harvard. And the essay that we're presenting is originally from a collection he wrote called Delirious Milton, which is a collection of works analyzing the life and works of Milton. He also may or may not have written a copy of Milton on reasoning class. That can give you an idea of him. Now, he opens this essay by sort of asking a question of why did Milton choose to write about the fall of all things? And he recognizes that this is a really broad question, so he kind of limits himself and says, why did he choose to write about the fall during the time of the Renaissance and in that context? Because there's actually pretty little precedent for writing a biblical epic at the time. Most of the epics were based on some sort of historical event, like the Song of Roland, which is based on a battle that took place during the Crusades. And so that was sort of the convention of the times that you took this historical event and turned it into an epic. So, why didn't Milton choose to write about some of the great figures of Britain's history, like King Arthur or Alfred the Great? And in fact, we have evidence that Milton did begin to write exactly such a poem, but he never finished it. And so it's just sort of unusual that he chose this topic at the time of the Renaissance. And it's unusual considering how people viewed epic poetry during the Renaissance. So about 100 years before Milton was born, there was sort of this reflourishing during the Renaissance of sort of literary criticism when they rediscovered some of these Greek texts. Especially there was a text by Aristotle called Poetics that had enormous influence on how people viewed epic poetry. And people began to develop these very rigid set of rules of what constituted an epic poem. So it was based on the idea of like these classical epics like Homer's Odyssey and Virgil's Aeneid and so forth. And that, you had to follow this structure and write in this style if you wanted to be an epic poem. And when it came to choosing the subject of what you were going to write about, there were sort of two rules that really developed. And you needed to follow these rules if you wanted it to be an epic. The subjects needed to have some sort of connection to historical truth. They needed to be based on some sort of heroic event that actually happened. At the same time, it was perfectly acceptable to invent new characters and new situations to sort of add dramatic tension and so forth to your poem, and to sort of let the poet show off a little bit of what he could do. At the same time, there was also a need for a poem to have this unified sort of structure and theme, and generally just to be coherent. And as we'll see a little bit, that contrasts with how epics tend to treat history. And I think Paul will tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay, so as established as Renaissance theory, as we see, there actually pose a great challenge and limits to the poetry compositions at this era. The first one is, as Jacob said before, is because of the imitation on classical texts. So according to Teskey, it was a common practice during that time to derive the authority to call themselves epics by a relationship or similarity to the true epic poems. So this imitation greatly narrowed the range of choices of subject. And then the second one is historical epics. They emphasize the importance of subject. So as we all know, history is a very complicated and constant changing thing, and you cannot really easily to unify history events into a single purpose. So in that case, the importance of subject has to do with sacrifice. As Teskey have mentioned, a subject at that time is reduced to a bare matter to be given a form and a soul by the poet. So is no longer important. It's all about the functionality. And also for functionality, some necessary fictional elements need to be added to support a purpose. And the third one is the drawbacks of broken packages of history. So let me explain this. Under the guideline of Renaissance theory, the way you compose a historical epic is to break the historical events into small pieces, little chunks, they are not like, they are broken pieces, not connected with each other, but you need to connect those irrelevant historical events into unified purpose. So that is very hard practice. Like, first of all, you lack of like necessary logical transitions to connect those like originally irrelevant elements, and it will be really hard to unify those events for a core thesis. So that's basically the conflict between Milton's stance and Renaissance view. Milton is very comfortable with using this like cut and paste those small chunks of history, this method, and he respects the subject of narrative very much, and he really cares about the accuracy of the history in the historical epics. And like, here's a quote: "What is foremost is an unwavering and intense concentration on truth." So what Milton sees that it's not okay, like what those poets are doing. They're just selecting like irrelevant historical events and try to force them into like connected events and with unified purpose. So Milton choose the subject that fit him the most is the man's first disobedience. Is a like unified. It is a unified set of events, and have unified purpose is what fit most for Milton.
You didn't say anything.
So here's some psychological context. Ultimately, the question is, why did Milton go through all this trouble choosing his subject? And the answer is, well, it was Renaissance logic, essentially. During the Renaissance, there was this great idea in attempting to justify actions through reason. And during the time, according to the author, there was two different types of mental thinking. One was the unconscious, that was the instinctual, the emotional, and the other one was logic, reasoning. And Milton was essentially obsessed with justifying all his actions, including the subconscious ones, through reason. He desperately wanted to justify any subconscious choice, for example, subject matter, through logic. But as he went through the process of choosing his subject matter, he found out that he could not justify certain subject matters through proper reasoning. For example, he rejected the idea of telling the tale of King Arthur because he could not possibly justify it through his own logic, because he believed that it was broken history. It was broken history that was not properly supported, and as he went through all the historical events that he could possibly choose from, he just could not justify any of them. So this is why he chose to write about Paradise Lost, because being a pre-biblical event, this naturally came in the form of a story that fit an epic poem, which allowed him to thoroughly justify his choice. So, in conclusion, why does this matter? Well, through Milton's subject of choice, through Milton choosing to choose to write about the fall, through his intense filtering of subject matter, he essentially redefined the heroic poem. Now the heroic poem was no longer about some great hero doing heroic deeds and saving the day. Now it could be told in the form of a tragedy. Recall in Paradise Lost, our protagonist is no hero. He is the villain. He is Satan himself. But Milton was able, through his subject matter, to change the protagonist from a hero to a villain and turn the poem instead into a tragedy.